Welcome to the Raising Different podcast with Evan and Amy Shout. This is episode 1 because it took us 2 episodes to figure out a name. I was kind of lost that there was this many autism podcasts out there, but I guess there is. So we finally came up with the name Raising Different, and I kind of like it. So this is what we're going to go with. Want to start by thanking Hebrew Group of Companies. So that's the business I work for allowing us the time and the resources to release this. This is kind of a pet project for both Amy and I. And it's kind of a continuation from some of the work we've been doing with autism services and speaking for the public school divisions and a few other things. I mean, our journey is pretty unique. And I say that with quotations, unique. But I think we have a lot of insights for not only parents, but the public in general, whether it's government, whether it's other areas, that we want to kind of get our message across of what's coming. I mean, the stats on autism are getting larger, and what we feel can be done, because obviously we're in the middle of it, and we kind of looking into our future and seeing roadblocks and ceilings that we may hit, and I want those gone before we get there. So that's part of why we're advocating. But so I want to start off with a little bit of an intro for us before we get into some of our podcast guests. So I wanted to start off, Amy, just a quick one. What's your earliest memory, I guess, of the autism journey, the roller coaster that we are currently on?
I would say the earliest memory is the day that I realized that Ashton had autism.
We were going to the exact same one, just so you know. Go ahead.
Well, the day I realized it, he was in the basement and I was sitting on the stairs, and the Bubble Guppies were on the big TV. And he was standing in front of the TV, flapping his hands and running on the spot. And I thought to myself, oh, how did I miss it? And I just thought of every single indicator that he presented with. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure he hits every single bullet point for autism. So that would be the one when he was just standing there running on the spot, flapping, having the time of his life. And I was like, oh, I think Ashton might have autism. And then the other one was after we left the appointment with the hearing specialist, and we were sitting in the truck, and I was probably 6 months pregnant with Tristan. I was pregnant already, and we were driving back to the farm from the city, and I said to you, I don't think Ashton has a hearing problem. I think Ashton has autism.
Yeah.
But I think I thought that
before
a couple of weeks before that, but I think that was the first time that I told you that that's what I thought.
And that's where my memory was. It was, we went in for a hearing test, because obviously when they go nonverbal, that's the first thing you do. And the doctor kind of looked at us, and Ashton had freaked out and wouldn't let him look in his ears. And he says, your kid doesn't have a problem hearing. And that didn't dawn on me. But then on the ride home, you were pretty quiet. And I was probably more mad at Ashton at that point, because it had been such a day. And you looked at me and said, Ashton doesn't have a hearing problem. He's got autism. And then I went home and hit Google, which I highly recommend nobody ever Google. whether it's medical or stuff like this, don't Google. But from that point on, it is the life as we know it. So yeah, that was probably my first memory. So we're not far off. I want to give a little description of the boys to the audience. I mean, we're going to talk about them quite a bit over this series, and you can see them in the background, but give your description of the boys, and I'll just add in some colorful relief.
Okay, well, I'll start with Ashton just because he's the oldest.
Yep.
But Ashton's kind of your mini-me. And I would say if he got lost on the street and somebody knew you, and
they'd know he was
they saw Ashton, they'd be like, oh, there's Evan, 30 years younger. Take him back to the Shout house. But I would also say he is like more of our gentle giant, calm soul, really dependent on routines. He has the best smile ever that lights things up. He does have a decent attention span, and he prefers adult company. So
he's our little introvert. So he's like me in more than just looks. He he avoids people. That's how he likes his quiet time and the dark. And yes,
He'll
very
kick you out of the
regimented.
playroom because that's his spot and his time, and he doesn't want anybody crashing his party. And whereas Tristan is like his polar opposite, who never sits still and never leaves you alone and needs an expert.
He's your mini
Yeah,
me.
yeah, he's super busy. He would be like the devil in disguise for sure. Good thing he's cute because it gets him out of a lot of trouble. He really likes people, and he really likes anything to do with activity, swinging, jumping, tickle games, fidget toys, all of those kinds of things. So if you can catch him, you can play with him. Like...
Yeah, it's actually quite hilarious because they say obviously autism is a spectrum, and both of ours are nonverbal, so they're on one end of the spectrum, but they are so different on the spectrum. We have...
Yeah, it's kind of neat to see how they each have a very distinct personality that is nothing like the other, but they're both considered to be like a level 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Give a little bit of our home lives to the audience. I mean, through the blogs I write, they obviously get a very good indication of how things go and some of our problems and some of our successes, but give them a bit of our home life.
Well, like a day in the life.
Just enough to be dangerous. Let's put it that way.
Okay, well, I would say like I'm usually up between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, and you're usually up about half an hour before that. And we just hope that we each get enough time that I can shower and have a cup of coffee, and you can like get your cardio and breakfast in, so that we have like half an hour to an hour of time before the kids are up. But our day is really structured, and it may not have to be, but we all function and operate better that way. It's predictable for the kids, and it's easier to remember all the medications that are in when you have a routine, and meds are being given like 3 to 6 times a day, depending on which kid we're dealing with. So I would say our day usually starts with morning routine, breakfast, meds, hygiene, a little bit of playtime. Then we either pack up and prepare for school or respite. There's always a structured routine for either a school day, a non-school day during the week, or a weekend/holiday day. And if you deviate from that routine, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah, I often joke I can look at my watch at work or when I'm at a conference and the people beside me, and I could say, I know exactly what my family is doing right now. Because our day is that structured. And thank you, Ashton, for teaching Amy and I how to structure a day. But it works for us. So if any friends wonder why we say no to certain outings, it's probably because it doesn't fit Ashton's schedule, which is now ours.
Yep. We have a strict outing time of noon till 4 p.m. And if you invite us to go anywhere outside of those hours, you better be a really special person, or B, we're not coming.
Because the boss says no. Because the boss says
anyway.
no.
Yeah, he won't want to go anyway. Tristan will just get in the car. As long as it's not your truck, he'll be fine. He'll go. He won't care. And then everybody will be crying at evening shower time because they'll be tired and thrown off. Yeah. So then you have to listen to crying for an hour. So you decide if you want friends or crying.
All right. Last question before we move forward. Go over why we, I guess, chose to do this. I mean, I obviously pushed you a little bit on this one, but I started the advocating, to be truthful, as therapy. I got to write the blogs and stuff. It allowed me to put some feelings down on paper because things are difficult at times. So that's why I chose it. It's obviously turned into a little bit more since then, since we're sitting on here talking quite openly about our kids and our life. But for me, I'm looking at the future, and I've got a pretty realistic viewpoint of where I think it is. And I hope it goes certain ways. And there's things I could be wrong on, but I want to be prepared either way. So the advocating side to me is, if we can get a voice out and change something in society or something in the needs of children and tell others what's coming, I guess, because I don't believe that the public knows the numbers right now. And I don't believe they know the short services and all the stuff that we talk about with a lot of the professionals and what we're going to get through on this podcast. So that to me was the big part of this, is being out in front of the curve and getting ahead of this. Cause I think society is not prepared for what's coming.
I do it because I want more for our children, and I want more for us and other families like us. I feel like the services now that are available are quality services. There's just not nearly enough of them. And so, with numbers rising the way they are, I mean, we already feel like we can't get enough recreational
Help.
services. We can't get enough therapy. We need people. We don't need statistics. We don't
Yeah.
need classroom lessons. We need humans. And so I just feel like if we talk about that and bring awareness to that and share our experiences with other families going through the same thing, we can either make change or be crazy together. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. And I think we've been very clear. I mean, we don't think it's one institution or one area, whether it's government, the school system, the social programs. We don't think there's one area that is short or long on this. We think they all are. So we are going to come out and say a few things, and some people might not like what we say, and some people might. But the one thing with this is we are going to be truthful in what we're talking about, and when we interview people, we're going to ask questions that we actually want the answers to. Because if we want the answers, my assumption is that other parents in our position and they're worried about their kids, they want the same answers. So that's the goal.
Too, so far throughout all of this autism journey, whatever you want to call it, I feel like we either got lucky or we're really fortunate that we received some of the right services at the right time. The early intervention services that we received with like the feeding therapy and the behavior training and all of that stuff totally set us up to be able to better manage what we're dealing with now. And I think that if we wouldn't have had that at a young age, things would be a lot more difficult than they already are some days.
Yep.
But I would say that they definitely made a huge impact on how we run the day to day.
And to be open to ones that are going to listen to us in the future, hopefully. Amy's obviously got a background in special needs teaching in the public school system. So she's going to be a little more higher up than I am on the discussion because I was more like a deer in the headlights. So I think, remember that going forward. And we're going to try and bring you as much content as we can. Obviously, this is a bit of a pet project, but it's something that's important to both of us. So I hope you enjoy the interviews that are coming. And that's Raising Difference. We're working a little bit with Autism Services on a few areas. I obviously joined the board of directors this last summer, and I want to do a little bit on the marketing side with them. So we've agreed to do a podcast series called, if I can remember, Community and Care, Autism in Saskatoon. That's how prepared I was. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna do a few interviews with some of their programs and some of their other Little Tots programs and a few of the other services that they provide. And we get to start with Mr. Alex Scott. So I'm going to let you do your intro because I know Amy knows you quite well from with our kids in the past, but I haven't met you on a lot of occasions. So give me your background and I guess why you are working at Autism Services right now.
For sure. First of all, thank you, Evan and Amy, for having me on. I was actually quite excited to do this like all week. So it's neat to connect. But yeah, my name is Alex Scott. I am the Director of Family Programs at Autism Services in Saskatoon. Obviously, we are a not-for-profit charity organization, and we strive to provide as many services as possible to our autistic population. I've been with this agency, it seems like forever. I think I started in 2010 as a program worker, moved into the intervention department, and sort of just kind of moved around and worked my way up to a director role. And I've been in this role for many years now.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. If somebody didn't know what family programs consisted of or what it was all about, like you just had a brand new family come into Autism Services, walk into your office and say, Alex, tell us what family programs are. Could you give us a bit of information?
Absolutely. We've come a long way, but basically we are primarily a recreational-based department. We do have some therapeutic elements in there as well, but we look to partner with various businesses and venues in Saskatoon to kind of help us deliver more like structured, adaptable, modified programs for a lot of our kiddos. And it ages it's all over the map. We service like 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 8-year-olds, all the way up to like 19 plus. So we offer several different like social programs, recreational programs, and we just kind of want to get our kids into being active, maintaining some levels of physical fitness, but also learning how to socially interact properly, learning how to be a bit more independent, build some of those natural skill sets that typical kids can achieve as well. So we exist for many different reasons, but I'm sure we can discuss that a bit more in depth here.
Well, I know that our kids were a big part of the summer camp program that you offer. And I really found that to be an outlet for them that was meaningful recreation, but also provided them with a community of people like themselves. So they weren't standing out everywhere we went. Like they're 11 and 13 now, chronologically, but like developmentally, they're probably like 3 and 4. And so when you're at the spray park, at a splash pad, having a heyday, and there's a bunch of other typical kids around you, that 11 years old looks really different now, typical to a child who's significantly affected by autism. And I just found like for them to have that outlet of camp where the whole camp went to the spray park together, it's just they had a place where they belonged, and it made such a huge difference for them there to just be able to be themselves and play and have a community like them to explore with. So thank you for that.
For sure.
I know we've also been part of the swimming and the fun in the gym programs in the past for examples of just some recreation. I'm wondering, which programs did you start with and which ones are kind of new to the list?
Well, some of our long-term staples involve like our youth and adult social clubs. Basically, we get our teenagers and our adults out into the community to sort of like initiate and maintain some social interaction while kind of participating in a different activity each week. Fun in the Gym has been a long-standing program as well. However, we used to actually staff that one-on-one, but because of that, we were only able to service like 15 kids per session. But because we went to more of like a parented stance where we just have like different stations, we have like 60 kids into our seasonal programs now. So it is a bit of a fine balance, just trying to like get as many kids into our services as possible while also making it worthwhile for the parents as well as the kids participating too. So we're always sort of adapting our model season to season to make sure that we can get it right, basically. And then, of course, like the summer day camps, we've been running that forever too. That was my first job in like 2010. So we got a lot of good things going on.
For sure. What are they required to do before they can participate in the recreational programs? I can't just walk into autism services and say, hey, I want to register for the winter semester of bowling with my child, right? Like there's some things that need to happen. Is there an application process of sorts or some kind of membership requirement? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every parent or every family that wants to get involved in our agency will have to go through a typical intake process. So they'll sit down with their intake coordinator, go through like their membership applications. Unfortunately, the wait list is quite extensive right now, but that's just sort of a reality of our industry right now, just dozens of new kids coming in every month. But once you get past that point, you kind of get directed in whatever way you want to go, whether it's our ABA Little Tots department, get some like one-on-one intervention with a consultant, or they'll talk about family programs or residential, basically. And then from there, you just kind of register as soon as we launch and cross your fingers that you can get in, because we only have certain amount of spots still. And that's a little tough because we do want to get everyone in, but it's just not a reality right now too.
Yeah. And I mean, your journey, obviously, if you're talking 2010, your journey pretty much started when our journey started with autism. And I mean, that's kind of when we got involved with autism services back then through the Little Tots program. And then obviously, as Amy said, through all the summer programs and all that stuff. And for me, it wasn't just good for the kids. It was good for us as well. And I mean, Amy can probably back me on this, but not only, like she said, it gave us the ability for our kids to go out in public and we didn't have to worry because they were they were with kids like themselves. But the other one was it gave us kind of a breathing room, which allowed them to go have fun with people that were qualified and could watch them. And yet it would give us, a few summer days here and there to kind of just take a breath, get ready for the coming week and that kind of stuff. So it's big for the parents too. Do you find that as well? Or do you see that from your side, I guess?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our summer camps, for example, like we operate Monday to Friday during the day. So that's 1 week right there where parents can just kind of go about their day-to-day business without really worrying about where their kids are at because they're in a safe place such as our camps. So we definitely see that here. And I think whether you have a child on the spectrum or not, like I have 2 kids and I mean, we got to get them in programming too and just kind of like play that balancing act of, well, do I need to leave at 2 p.m. today because something's popped up with a speech pathology appointment or I think it's just the overall reality of parents. So as one myself, I definitely get that perspective when you're trying to get your kids in our programs too.
I even found that like with just even the parented sessions, like, yes, when we first started with Fun in the Gym, they did have a one-on-one support worker that would take them through and entertain them and keep them safe and try and help them, go through all the different tasks and stations set up. But even when it is just parent-led, just the opportunity to have a space that's like appropriate and safe, and there's all sorts of other kids with all sorts of different ranges of abilities there together, and there's also a community, like a group of parents that are in your position. So if somebody's child is struggling or somebody's child does something like hang off a balance beam or a high bar and they've never done that before, we can celebrate together, we can support together if somebody's having a rough time, and there is no judgment. And that's really important too, is just to be able to have a stress-free outing where you can enjoy your child. So I also feel like that was a huge benefit of family programs that we've experienced.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of our venue partners, they're so excited to resume action with us too, because they get exposed to the autism world more than they have in the past, just like running their typical day-to-day business. So they start to become more aware of, you can't just put every kid into the same box. Like they operate differently, they interpret their surroundings differently, and they move at their own pace. So our venue partners are starting to become very understanding of that too. So they adapt the lessons and make sure that it's right for every kid.
I would like to know too, I bet you staffing presents an enormous challenge for you, because I mean, I would pay a rate as a parent, but sometimes, like one of my children potentially right now would need 2 people, 2-on-1, and then one of the other one would need a 1-on-1. And it's just like, wow, to be able to make that affordable while also providing the care that's needed and just being able to find the staff for that. Can you talk a little bit about staffing, maybe challenges or successes for you? And like, have you been able to like maybe wrangle some summer students along that have came and grown with the programs and just keep coming back? Or how did you establish all of that?
And I want to add to that, how do you find the volunteers, I guess, just to further her question, is where do you find them and how do you keep increasing them? Because obviously you opened up the letter when you said that we're over, the waiting list is very long and it's getting larger, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's successes and challenges. Successes are once a lot of our staff get into our agency, they do want to keep returning every season. Like we've had several coordinators they started out as like casual staff who stepped up in the coordinator roles now, and they've been with our agency for a few years now. But honestly, it's a huge challenge finding staff and like getting that routine every session too, because most of our staff are like university kids, they're students, or maybe they have a full-time job. So like casual work is appealing to an extent, but it's not always going to be at the top of the priority list for them. So we do have a lot of turnover every season. I'm interviewing I'd say 8 to 10 different people every season, just so we can accommodate all of our programs and our kids. So it's a balancing act. It's a little exhausting and stressful, but we always find a way to make it happen because we have to. And it's just a matter of where can you pull from and how can you convince them to stay. And I think it's just offering that quality of programming that can really attract them to stay.
So if you could do a sales pitch, I guess, for volunteers, what do you see? Like, how does it impact their future careers? Like, what are they getting out of, from their standpoint, the volunteerism side, to help them with whatever future careers they might be looking at? Because to come do something like this, I'm assuming it probably applies to what they're studying or what they plan on going into.
Yeah, generally speaking, you can tell by their resume, they're either in psychology or education or special ed, or maybe they work at Sask Polytech. So to an extent, it's a bit of a resume builder, but at the same time, they do want that real world experience too, because eventually they're going to get thrown into that world permanently as a 25-year-old. So getting into the system early and presenting those challenges and celebrating those successes is pretty important. And we do actually get a lot of volunteers coming forward and getting into our agency. It's just a matter of, can I place them everywhere? And can we get the same amount of staff so I can pay them? It's always a balancing act, but I'm
finding a person and finding a good fit is also probably challenging, because you might have a lot of volunteers that would be great with adults, and then some that might be better with your younger crowd and that sort of thing. And so just to be able to put those people with clients that they might be a good match with too would also be something that I assume you would have to try and take into consideration as you are placing staff.
Yeah, I work at the office primarily full time. So once I hire the coordinators and the staff, I'm kind of putting the onus on them to sort of if you need to switch up a pairing with a client and a worker, please do so. Because at the end of the day, our main goal is still to ensure that parents and kids are satisfied with the programming. Everything else just kind of comes after from a professional standpoint, but that's kind of number one. And sometimes we do just have to churn and try some new staffing out because maybe the relationship just isn't as natural as we want it to be.
I don't know. I sure found the years that when my kids attended consecutive camp seasons, they were probably somewhere between the ages of 5 and 9 were the years that they were going most frequently, I would say. And boy, was it comforting when I would come back the following summer and the same program coordinator would be there. And there would be at least 5 or 6 staff out of the 12 or 15 that were there on that day that had known my children from the year before. And so I think staff retention comes too when they just accidentally fall in love with one of the clients, or they develop a good relationship and they get that sense of satisfaction or being needed or enjoy seeing that child have a great day and them being able to be part of that day and to know that client really well. And then when you return, for them to see familiar people and familiar staff, to see those, I just felt okay, I can be relieved a little bit right now. It's the same coordinators. There's some familiar people here. At least somebody knows my kids. Because when you're just dropping a nonverbal child off for 6 hours, that can be really stressful for some parents, and I just try to okay, these are the possible scenarios that could happen today. I better make sure I have this in their backpack. I better make sure that I have X number of fidget toys and X number of snacks and sunscreen and water and all of these things. And then have a good chit chat with whoever's working with them. And just I love that we always got the outings in advance to say okay, on this day, we're going to go to Pike Lake for the afternoon. And then maybe the next day we might go to the bowling alley because it's raining or whatever. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, those are outings we've done before. And I can go and tell the staff, you might want to anticipate this happening today. Or like, my one child loves the lake. Somebody is going to freeze in there. So you guys are going to need to switch off because he's not getting out of the water until you pull him out. And so it's just really awesome to be able to have that.
As you can see, Alex, your people probably loved having Amy show up.
Or not.
Or not.
We're like half an hour.
No, the more information, the better. And I mean, like we prep all of our workers ahead of time too. Like we have some pretty in-depth training. It's not just reading a PowerPoint and like talking about autism. It's kind of acting out potential things that could happen and how you would deal with it. And we get profiles on all our kids too. So like if we do have a kid who is known to historically love water, then the worker is going to know about that so they can adapt and just be like, well, I guess I'm swimming every day.
Well, and to be fair, I think, and Amy, you can correct me, but I think we had one kid that didn't Ashton have a seizure while he was at one of the summer programs?
Twice he did.
And it was handled very well. We met him at the hospital. Like you had the protocols in place, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if there was ever parents that were worried about, leaving their kids, like Amy said, it is stressful to just drop them off and take off those first few times. We've had the experiences on the other end, and they were handled very well.
And well, I know that now there's like the application form that you get when you first apply for any of the recreational programs. Now they feel lengthy at first. If you're like a brand new family to this and you're filling out this form and you're going, oh my goodness, I was not prepared for a 30-minute form for each kid minimum. Depending on your child's needs, it may or may not take that long to fill out. But the more time you put into filling out the paperwork, like it is very evident that somebody reads that. And, if your child does have medical issues beyond the autism diagnosis, that the staff is aware of that and there's a plan in place to deal with that. And it's really clear that everything you put down is debriefed with the staff, because just about every worker that's had my kids has said, oh, hey, I saw this in their application. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or else they'll say, oh, I see that he has some calming items. Are those with him? Can you show me where they are or whatever? And so I feel like even though it seems like a daunting task when you open up the form and you're like, oh my goodness, what is this? But, you get through it once and then you just update it every time. And if I wouldn't have filled that form out to completion to the best of my ability, then I would not have had the same result that we did with Ashton when he had his emergency situation where he had a seizure, and one of the workers was able to recognize it fairly quickly. And I don't even think it was the person paired with him that day. But the coordinators knew him well too. And so everybody knew something was off, and everybody just stayed calm, stuck to the plan, called me right away. Like, it was just so awesome. And I just thought, oh, okay, like the worst thing that I imagined happening at camp already happened and we all made it through. So, I just felt so confident that like, if my kids can participate in camp, anybody's kids can participate in camp. So, thank you for having that outlet. And even though, all the staff it might be their first year or they might not know that much about autism, if they're prepped for what's coming, it makes it a lot easier for them to just fill in the shoes that they're needed to fill.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of ripping off the Band-Aid, not just from a parental angle, but from a staff angle too. Like a lot of these staff are dealing with situations like seizures for the first time too. So, I mean, they're also getting that experience so that they can carry forward a bit more responsibly as they progress through their employment. So it helps. It does seem like a bit of an overload situation when the parents start filling out those forms, but honestly, I assure you, it helps us immensely because every kid's very complex. Like they deal with their own issues, whether it's medical related, whether it's behaviorally. And when we have that, we can sort of visualize it and then apply those practices as things go along. And as you said, like when your child had a seizure, like no one panicked because we had that information. And we're just like, okay, this is happening. Follow the protocol, keep calm, and like call the parents, and everything will work out because it's just preparation, you know?
Well, yeah, and then I knew like, okay, my son's okay, and then I went to the support worker that rode the ambulance with him and the coordinator that rode with him, and I said, okay, are you guys okay? Because I considered too, like, hey, like that's a rough day in in the life of a camp counselor, you know, and like you said, some of those people are probably experiencing those issues for the first time. So it was really like I just thought, okay, my child is okay. Are the people who are working with my child okay? Because A, we want them to come back tomorrow, but B, we want to make sure that they know that they're appreciated, and you know, we need them just as to continue with camp, and we want them to have a good experience.
So I want to pull Alex a little bit into the broader community a little bit. So and this is a question that's kind of been given to me, and I thought about it a bit, and I'd like to hear your answer. Was more on, so you guys are out in the community a lot, obviously, like we said, Pike Lake, all the other events, the fun in the gyms and stuff. How do you think that promotes kind of the inclusivity and the awareness and all that with autism and the broader community? Because you are going into a lot of public places, right?
Yeah. I think it promotes it very effectively. Like, as you know, we do celebrate and recognize Autism Awareness Month every year, but Autism Awareness Month wasn't where it was today as far as actual programming goes. Like, it was a month where we recognized autism for 30 days, and we didn't necessarily have a lot of these programs we have today in place. So I think we've come a long way this past decade, just like really kind of challenging some of these businesses out in the community and be like, hey, we have 15 kids here who want to come to your business. We want to give you business too. So how can you support them? And honestly, most of them are up to the challenge because they know that they're just kids who want to enjoy some programs like any other typical kids. So I think we're getting there. I think we still need to keep pushing for that inclusivity and keep promoting it as much as possible. Like, a lot of these kids can do anything if you set them up for success, right? And I think that's kind of where we come in, and we need to really be a huge advocate for the kids we serve as well, and just be like, hey, we're throwing them into a video game parlor, and we're going to go go-karting today, and you need to be okay with it because I said so. And it's just kind of like building that confidence with these businesses as well, because maybe they might have reservation because they've never experienced an autistic individual doing these activities before. But it's just that communication and just kind of promoting like, hey, they're just kids, man. Like, we have the tools to get them to succeed.
And we're finding that, I mean, even with our respite workers that we have now, when they go to swimming or other things, there's a lot of times where they'll let them in free, or they'll let obviously the workers in free, and they kind of seen it before. So I mean, programs like yours are a bit to be thanked for that, because you're getting out into the community, you're showing this side of autism, and it's allowing families like ours to continue to be able to do that, even not when we're in the family programs, but when it's just Amy and I or our workers taking them out on their own.
And we've been recognized at indoor playgrounds lots before too, like, oh, hey, you know, your kids were here with autism services in the past. Or I'll just say, oh, they each have a one-on-one person with them that will be going through the play space today. They both have autism, they're nonverbal. And they'll be like, oh, okay, go on through, have a good time. And sometimes we even get a discount. Like, it just seems like there's so many more businesses, and especially like child-centered places in the community that are there. Definitely has been more exposure to these places, and I think that's a lot to do with some of the recreational programs for sure.
I mean, it's our duty to build capacity. Like, that's kind of what we stand for as an agency, and we know we have tons of new families coming into our system all the time. So like, how can we be inventive and innovative? And it's honestly just picking up the phone, sending an email to people that we haven't tapped yet, and just having that conversation and see what comes of it.
Now, I know Amy and I spoke at the gala here, I guess it would have been a couple months ago now at this point, and I know you got the program for a sponsor a child campaign. So I guess give us your take on the program and how it supports families and that side of it. So almost give us your sales pitch if you could, Alex.
Absolutely. We implemented a financial assistance program to all of our families who could really benefit from it, because all of our programs are fee-based. So in order to sort of back that program up from our end, we do need to have fundraisers and donation-based programming like the Sponsor a Child campaign. But the really special part about it is we get to tell a story about a child in a specific program. Like, this is how this child can benefit being in a 1 week of summer day camp. This is how they can benefit from being in a 10-week music therapy program. So we're not just appealing for money to kind of like help these families out. We're actually attaching a nice little story and how it can impact a specific child, even though it's not going towards like an actual child by name. But that's sort of the general gist of the Sponsor a Child program, is like your money can go towards the coverage of someone who just wants to get their kid into a therapy. Or maybe they want to do swimming lessons for the first time, but they can't afford to pay $200. So we need your help to help offset these costs too, because we are still a not-for-profit agency. But just sort of, having that attachment kind of resonating with the community and showing them like what impact they can actually make by describing what we're trying to do, that kind of makes them want to give us money more.
Where can somebody go if they want to donate to Sponsor a Child campaign? Is it on the website? Do they come to the office?
Either or. Everything's sort of online now. So if they just go to our website at autismservices.ca, there will be a link to donate. Obviously, emailing us directly, Ali Guarneri, she's our marketing manager here. She's the one who kind of handles the campaign and kind of seeks those donations as well. So there's many ways to donate. And we've had a lot of success with this program the last couple of years. So we're going to keep it rolling.
Okay, I don't want to keep you for too long, Alex. We're pushing on the half hour here now. So I got one final question, and then Amy, I want you to answer it as well. So I guess the question for me is, looking back, I mean, give us your one of your success stories, or one of your parent testimonials, or something you can remember from, obviously you've been doing this quite a while, so I'm sure you got lots, but give us your top one you can think of right now in terms of the programs.
It's a loaded question.
I know.
It is. We should have started with that and then asked it again at the end, so that we had some thinking time here. Oh boy.
I can start with mine if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
Mine is the first time they took Ashton swimming at Pike Lake, because what they didn't realize is that he has no pain threshold and he will not come in. So I think whatever worker it was, and I feel bad for her because I'm sure her lips were blue by the end, but I'm pretty sure he put her through the ringer because he did not want to get out of the lake. That was my top one.
That's good.
Yeah, what I think. Go ahead, Alex, if you got
one. You got. I got a couple more.
I'm thinking about my youngest. When he first started, it wasn't recreational programs off the hop. It was ABA Little Tots program. And he had extreme separation anxiety. He was like 2 years old at the time. And so it was like a half an hour cry fest whenever I would drop him off and leave and that sort of thing. And finally, he was able to participate in the half-day camps. I want to say he was 5 or 6 that first year. And by the time we were at that level, he would just run in the door with anybody in a blue shirt that opened it for him and just that's my person today. And he would know it. He would make the connection. He would go and he would just not look back. And I couldn't believe it. It took us a couple years to come that far. But wow, did he build independence and just being able to do something without his mom. I know that seems like a small step, but for kids who maybe don't have language and don't feel really super safe without their comfort person, he knew that, okay, these people in the blue shirts, they're here for me and they do fun things with me and I'm in, and away he goes. And that was it until pickup time. And so that was a huge success for me, to just be able to leave him somewhere and for him not to be upset about it. It was
and now awesome. Now the problem is he doesn't look back ever.
Yeah.
And doesn't care
Yeah,
if
now
we're there
he
or
just
not.
goes- Yeah.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I could think about 10 different stories, but one that kind of stood out to me, which was just sort of seeing the evolution of a client who's just starting out and then at their end goal is, I think it was one of our youth clubs where one of the kids was participating for the first time, dealing with a lot of like social anxiety, would kind of like break down if the environment was too overstimulating, couldn't talk to anyone. And it was sort of like those little baby steps that you have to take where you're just like, okay, well, why don't you come in and just like sit down next to this person? And maybe that might take an hour. And then the following week, it's like, okay, how can we work on this progress? Why don't you go up to that person and just say, hey, my name is so-and-so. And I think it took probably like 2 sessions, like 20 weeks type of thing, where eventually the kid was just overjoyed to look forward to youth club every week. Kind of like talking about it with their parents finally and being like, hey, I actually made 2 friends in this program and now I'm excited to see them. And I think they actually even made efforts to like hang out outside of the social club. So it's stories like that where you're like, they started from, they couldn't talk to a single person. They couldn't even be in the same room as someone. And then over weeks, they had, with the support staff in mind, they were just able to kind of develop those skills naturally. And yeah, there's a lot of special ones, but that one stood out because you just know like, okay, our programs are being impactful here. And that's kind of a cool one where the parent sort of watches their child grow as well when they're behind the scenes.
Well,
Thanks.
I want to thank you, Alex, for coming on, and obviously thanks to Autism Services for allowing Amy and I to be a part of this marketing and this campaign. And thank you for what you're doing, because honestly, we both have gone through it with both our kids and love the family programs, got to see them in front of the gym and the trampolines and everything else back in the day. And we are a huge supporter of everything there, including the ABA Little Tots program. So again, thank you for allowing us to do this. So
if there's
thanks for
anything
having
that
me
we
on.
missed,
yeah, if there's anything that we missed, throw it in, I guess.
yeah, you were hoping for that question and we just didn't get to it today, or there was something that you wanted to mention about programs that we didn't cover, just feel free to blurt it out. But I mean, if you feel that was pretty
We're always
comprehensive.
looking to expand. We got some new cool things with like badminton and Olympic weightlifting, but I just want to say congratulations on your podcast also. Like,
Thank you.
we're not the only ones doing the work here. Like, it's advocates such as yourself who are like speaking up about your experiences and doing so to the public. Like, that's pretty awesome too. So good work. And I hope you get the content that you want.
No, much appreciated. So again, from Amy and I, thank you for listening, and thanks again to Autism Services. And that was Raising Different.